Take that off. Continue. All right, we'll begin. Hi, I'm Kathy Weymouth, and I'm a member of the Friends Group with the Holderness Library in the town of Holderness. And we've been doing these Thursday talks starting in January, and this is our fifth one. And we're excited to have Deb Nera, who's the Executive Director of CADY, Communities for Alcohol and Drug-Free Youth, along with Nikki Shetty, who's the Director of Restorative Justice. And Ann, I'm throwing your name in too. Ann's on the board of the library, but she also is on the board of CADY, and she's joining us this evening as well. And many of you already know so much about CADY, but I learned something today. It serves 18 rural towns in central New Hampshire. It is all about improving the lives of children and youth. And Nikki, I did see a statistic for restorative justice on your site that says you've been 93% effective. And I know people are going to be interested in learning more about what you're doing. But thank you. I know you all are busy and with the good work that you're doing. So I'm just going to throw it to you to begin your program.
Well, good. Thanks so much, Kathy. Nikki and I are thrilled to be here, and we appreciate your invitation to be part of your Thursday Talk series. How many years have you been doing this? Is this something that's a long
I think we're probably 2.5. COVID threw us into this. So it's really, we're maybe in our third year.
Oh, it's great. Well, that's good. I hope you keep it going for a good long time, because it sounds very worthwhile. But so we're going to be having a discussion at the end of the presentation. So our hope is that, and we'll be grateful if we can hold questions until then. That's going to help us ensure that we'll be able to get through the entire presentation. We do have quite a bit to cover in a short span of time. So what we want to do is really share with you who we are, what we do, and why we do the important work of substance misuse prevention. And that's going to help us stay within our time frame. So just a few things about our mission. We work with schools and communities, in the Pemmy-Baker, Newfoundland, and the Lincoln-Woodstock regions to prevent youth substance misuse and other drug use, and to promote. We all want our kids to live their best life. So they can only do that if they have healthy environments, and then we're going to hopefully see them off to promising futures. The next slide, please. And as presenters, we just wanted to share a bit about ourselves. I've been with CADY for 23 years, first as a founding board member, and the last 18 years as executive director. And I live in Plymouth with my husband, Tim, and we're going to be celebrating our 47th wedding anniversary next week. So I'm very excited about that. And we have 2 grown children and one grandchild, Isabel, and our second on the way. And I'm a former legislator, and and a lifelong educator. And my guiding philosophy is first we must reach, and then we can teach. And I know Ann is with us as well. And Ann's been with us for 15 years. And we're thrilled to have her expertise at the table, and her good positive energy. And Nikki, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Shed, and I'm the Restorative Justice Director at CADY. I've been at CADY. This is my second year at CADY after 20 years in private school, boarding school in particular, education as a teacher, a coach, a dorm parent, an administrator, and am thrilled to be working with still continuing to work with kids, but to work with a different demographic of kids, and to really put my efforts back into this community, which is deeply in need of our help. So very excited to be here and share with you all what we do here at CADY.
Great. Oh, thank you, Nikki. And if you want to advance the slide, please. So CADY is we've always adopted that attitude that it takes a village in raising children and working together in high-level collaborations. That's how we actually accomplish our work. And this is a picture of CADY with some of our volunteers. We have over 100 volunteers at our annual mini golf tournament in September. And so it's really exciting to be able to bring everyone together like that. And so far we've been blessed with good weather, and we have a ton of fun. And so that's who we are. It's not just a staff of 10. We could never accomplish this work alone. And so this right here is Kasarian Ngara. I'm not sure if you ever heard that. That is a Maasai tribe motto for their children. And basically what they do is all their greetings are, and how are the children? Children are a priority. And if we could just imagine a culture that is built around the well-being and the health and safety of our children, that is CADY's #1 priority. And that certainly is a collective responsibility of our whole society. And really, I translate this into protecting what we value most, and that's our children. And, you know, I would like to be able to answer that question, and how are the children? I'd like to say all the children are well. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We are going to be talking about some sobering data, and it can really pull you down. So we will, I promise you, we will lift you up, particularly with Nikki's presentation. It's so hopeful. And our battle cry is never, never, never give up on a child. So next. This was just about 6 months ago. Surgeon General Murthy issued an urgent public health advisory regarding the mental health of our children. And this is what he had to say. I need to get, there we go. Sorry, I'm trying to get, there we go. Mental health challenges in children, adolescents, and young adults are real and widespread. Even before the pandemic, an alarming number of young people struggled with feelings of hopelessness, depression, and thoughts of suicide. And rates have increased over the past decade. The pandemic's effect on their mental health has been devastating. And we have seen this. And so it's very frightening. And we'll talk about some of the remedies later. Nikki. And right now we have this, we're on May 14th, we're going to be doing a full screening of Lift the Mask. It's a documentary. And this is a 2-minute trailer. And Nikki, would you play this? It's pretty powerful. Thank you. Oops, what's going on here? Uh-oh. Oops, is it no audio?
Began with having much more paranoia than any child should have.
It's like you can't come up for air. It's almost as if all your hopes and dreams just disappeared.
He would say, Dad, I'm going to tell you, it's like I'm sitting on the steps watching myself do something and I wish I wouldn't do, but I can't stop myself.
What many people think is that this is a moral issue, not a medical one.
So whenever you go to a psychologist, you're crazy. Because of that pressure, I felt kind of like, I shouldn't do that because I don't have a problem.
Is this gonna be the new Michaela? Is that old Michaela gone? Are we ever gonna see her happy again? Is she ever gonna smile again?
He had started to feel really badly and called a psychiatrist, like, we can see you in January. I'm like, we can't wait until January. So literally he was like white knuckling it.
I was right here looking at that house and realizing that he would never be back here again.
I would tell people that she died of cancer because that was respectable.
If you had a friend or loved one
They could not see the light at the end of the tunnel. Would you go sit with them in the dark?
There's always a piece of me that's hopeful, always.
She said, Mom, I feel better.
What reaches people the most is when they find out that someone in their daily life has gone through something terrible and they're still the same person that they had grown to love. That's how the fear stops.
Thank you, Nikki. It worked. Whoops. Oh. Okay. So that's pretty sobering to look at the escalation of mental illness and the lack of treatment. That's very frightening. And so we knew that youth anxiety, depression, and suicidality were surging pre-pandemic, as the Surgeon General said, and we were very concerned then. And then 2 years of social isolation has only escalated the problem. And we are now in a full-blown emergency with our children and youth. Next. There we go. What you see right here is this is a 20-year trend analysis data chart of our Pemmy-Baker region. And this is from this data is gleaned from the YRBS Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and that is sponsored by the CDC every 2 years in high schools across the country. And this is the Pemmy-Baker. And right up through 2014, we were doing very well with the reduction of each of these indicators. And all those different lines, the zigzags, you know, they range across alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, binge drinking, prescription drug misuse, heroin, synthetics, and also vaping. You can see the vaping up in the upper right corner, the gray line. And the reason why that's a standalone is we only had 2 years of measures, and it's extremely high. In fact, our region, it has the highest incidence of vaping in the state, and the state of New Hampshire has the highest incidence of vaping in the country. So that means that as of our last measure in 2019, we had that distinction, and that's something we want to lose quickly if possible. And so that this is in addition to the vaping, we have seen a 77% increase in local youth marijuana use. And that is the green line. Look at that upward trajectory. That is very frightening. And all indicators that you see here in our region are higher than statewide averages. And we went from being lower than statewide averages to higher in a very short order. So next, please. So why is this happening? There are many contributing factors. It's never just one. And we're going to be discussing a few of those right now. And so what you see here, this is a chart that was done by SAMHSA, the Substance Misuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And what you see with the pink elliptical, I call that the addiction pipeline. And that's from the ages of 12 to 18. You see the upward surge of substance use, and that's where it all starts. And then use tapers off over the rest of the lifespan. And what we know is that 90% of those struggling with addiction began using in their teen years. And that's why, because the teen is undergoing teen brain is undergoing rapid development, that's why addiction is known as a disease of adolescence. So if we want to end the addiction crisis, we really need to get at the early stages of the addiction pipeline and prevent our kids from entering into substance use. And also provide services, early intervention services for kids that are in trouble with drugs. And we're seeing way too much of that. And another one of the scary truths is that marijuana and vaping, we just discussed that, Schools are struggling with students. This is happening all over the country in our own backyards. The students are in the bathrooms vaping, and they're vaping high potency THC in many, if not most of the situations. And the high potency THC is directly linked with poor mental health outcomes, addiction, and adolescent suicide. And suicide is the second leading cause of youth death in the country and in New Hampshire. It used to be the third, and unfortunately that data has moved upwards. Another contributing factor, this was some landmark research done by Dr. Jean Twenge. This was about 5 years ago. She wrote the book iGen. And what that does is that her research points to the extreme screen time and iPhones as being the major contributing factor to the youth mental health crisis, with social isolation being the major driving factor. And so what you can see here is as the screen time increases, there's less in-person and social interaction and more loneliness as a result. So, you know, human beings, we are social animals, and we are suddenly disconnecting from our social realm and more into it's more intra, and that's not good for any of us, particularly our children. And so let's take a look. CADY has many programs and several that we have just developed over the last few years in response to the opioid epidemic. But I'm only going to spotlight a few of these, and then Nikki is going to take a deeper dive into the restorative justice court diversion program. But all of our programming is all evidence-based, and we have programming in local schools and in the community. And what we'll be talking to you about is the Youth Advisory and Advocacy Council, the Central New Hampshire Community Opioid Response, and also the Parent Advisory Council, along with restorative justice. We're going to wrap up with restorative justice. And next slide, please. There we go. This was, we about 5 years, over 5 years ago, we launched the Parent Advisory Council. Our youth services director really noticed that there were few parents at the table, and we really needed to hear their voice. And so we developed this bi-directional program where we listen to parents, and then they also are helping with solving the problem, the big problem. So this is a few of the parents that are involved. And you know, if you'll remember the slogan of the 90s, parents, the anti-drug, it's truer today than ever before. We know that parents are on the front lines, and we want to be there to support them. And so we have that give and take, and it's a very powerful program. They've been instrumental in raising funds for in-school programming. And also they host this big event, you know, at the Bon and the Pemmy, the annual shout out to parents every year. And we typically have about 100 people attend that, and it's very powerful and empowering. And then the youth voice, we have youth leadership programs. We have we don't put labels on our kids. I always say labels are for clothing, not for children. And too often they are branded by you know, being you're in the honor society, and you're a delinquent. Those are things that we never discuss with our kids. So we have a whole spectrum from youth leadership that will have the honor society kids, and you know, kids that are you know struggling in school, that they're part of the leadership program. And then we have the spectrum of all the way through restorative justice, where our kids, our most high needs kids are working with Nikki to build that resiliency that they need to be successful. And so right now, what we're looking at is the Youth Advisory and Advocacy Council. And Nikki, if you could go to the next page, please. And they came together with Newfound Regional High School, the Plymouth Regional High School youth leaders, and they did the first Getting to Why event in New Hampshire. And what that was is they took a look at, and it's never happened in New Hampshire before, and most states this is not something that is an everyday occurrence. The students looked at their YRBS and they get to examine that data, and they became very, very concerned about the mental health crisis. They put together an action plan, and they have done presentations to the principals, to the school boards, and they have become quite the leaders on the topic. So they want to ensure that their peers are safe and that their futures are, pathways. They're going to be moving towards growth rather than, moving backwards and into the dark tunnel of drugs. And so we had a couple of the youth yesterday. They were testifying down in Concord. Couldn't have been more proud of them. Very, very powerful testimony. And that was very, they were complimented by the committee chairman. It was a great thing to see. So they're leading the way. And the next, and this is a new initiative we just launched this year. It's called iCare. New Hampshire, we're part of it's a mental health and wellness initiative. And, as a response to the high increases in suicide, we're raising awareness and making connections with services for those that are at risk. And so that when, there'll be somebody on the other end of the phone or walking through one of our doors, and we will do everything in our power to help whenever we can. Next. And as a response to the opioid epidemic, so many of us have tragically lost loved ones to the opioid crisis. And I personally have 7 dear friends that have lost their 20-something-year-old children. I just learned yesterday of another friend that lost her 40-year-old son. And it's so tragic. And after watching their suffering, I knew that at CADY, we needed to broaden our mission. In the past, we have worked exclusively with children and youth, and we needed to really be looking at working with young adults. And that's what we did, is we launched the Central New Hampshire Opioid Response. We have a consortium ranging from Mid-State Health Center to Spear Memorial Hospital to Lakes Ridge Mental Health, Whole Village, Plymouth Area Recovery Connection. In fact, as part of this, what we did is we launched with our partners, we always work in collaboration with Mid-State, we launched an intensive outpatient treatment program. Prior to that, there was no addiction treatment in our region, other than there was some medical assisted treatment through Mid-State Health, but nothing on intensive outpatient. We have that now. We also have a recovery services. Mid-State has recovery services in addition to that. And we also have Plymouth Area Recovery Connection, which CADY was instrumental in developing. And now we have peer recovery supports. Next up. So really what we're looking at now is a full continuum of care, prevention, treatment, and recovery. And that is something that we know is a comprehensive approach to the addiction crisis. We can't just be working in silos. We have to be working in collaboration with comprehensive systems. And that's something that CADY is dedicated to. Now now that I've given you all the bad news, sorry about that. Nikki is going to flip, and we're going to start talking about some of the solutions, and it's very hopeful and heartwarming. Nikki.
All right, thanks, Deb. So I'm going to highlight our restorative justice program. And the way I want to start that conversation is to talk about why a lot of the kids that come to us before we dive into all of the what that we do. One of the things that we see with the majority of the youth that come into our program are really high, what are called ACEs scores. ACEs is an acronym that is called Adverse Childhood Experiences. Adverse childhood experiences encompass various forms of physical and emotional abuse, neglect, household dysfunction experienced in childhood. ACEs have been linked to things like premature death, as well as various health conditions, including mental disorders. One thing that we do in our program is that every youth that comes into our program, I do a 10-question ACEs screening tool with them. That allows us to see right off the bat when we meet the youth that come into our program exactly what ACEs they've experienced in their youth so far, and how we can tailor our program to meeting the needs that they come into as a unique individual, and also the resources that we can connect them to as they move through our program. So one of the things that's really important with the way that we work with the kids that are in our program, knowing that they come in, many of them with high ACEs scores, is to make sure that everything we do is used through the lens of a trauma-informed approach. All of the work that we do with the youth in our program is empowerment-based, and that we really want to help our kids to focus on their strengths, that we focus on skill building for the time that they're on our program, and then to help create new supports and stability for the youth in our program. Many of them come in without those supports or that stability. So the combination of empowerment, strength-based approach, and then putting those supports into place can be incredibly pivotal for the kids in our program. And then the other component is that, as Deb mentioned, we don't use labels with the kids that come into our program. They come in, and many of them have spent a lifetime feeling like they are labeled or defined by the mistakes that they've made, or the things that are sort of categorizations that they might be subjected to in their lives. Everything that we do with these kids is from a place of empathy. We give them, the minute that they come into our program, we give them agency in that. We let them know that it is their choice whether or not they want to engage with this program. And usually that's maybe one of the first times they've ever heard when they've been in trouble that they actually have agency as to whether or not they want to engage in their own recovery from the mistake that they made. We provide them with a partnership in that we give them information, we give them the choice that I just talked about. And all of our interaction is also done from a place of respect, connection, and fostering hope with the kids in our program, while we're providing them access to tools, resources, and skills. So the next piece I have is a snapshot of our program, is a video that it was a labor of love for Deb over this last summer and fall, but this gives a really nice snapshot of what our program entails.
Well, I don't think there's anybody that can honestly say that they've never screwed up in their life. That they haven't lied to their parents, that they haven't done something that they wish they hadn't. And I don't think that a lot of children, they come before us, many of them don't have the guidance to have anybody sit down with them and say, you know, this is all about choices.
Youthful offenders who in most cases commit their first time offense, it's an opportunity, instead of going into court, to come in front of a community panel. And restorative justice has a lot of community pieces to it. And our community panels involve 3 community residents who actually went through a training with us. They listen to what happened in that case and that situation, and help structure with that youth, with the parent, with a restorative justice coordinator, a reparative agreement to address the offense that occurred and correct the wrong that occurred, with still helping to build that youth's self-esteem.
The offenses could be anything. For example, we've had kids that have done things like started fires. We've had kids that have come to us because they did some shoplifting. We've had kids that have gotten to a physical altercation with somebody at school.
We always want to lean towards using the diversion program, because I think overall that's better for most people. It gives them the best shot at correcting their behavior and getting the support that they need, so that in the future they're not going to be getting into the same situation or even worse.
It's better, I think, because number one, it holds the youth accountable, and they're accountable in front of a victim oftentimes, or a victim advocate who represents that victim. They're owning to what they did, and it's addressing the specific issues that occurred. And what we're also trying to do is take that youth and build self-esteem. And We kind of do a competency-based community service part where we get them back in the community doing something that's positive and oftentimes something that kind of focuses on their strengths.
So we receive, we have a youth that has committed an act that has gotten the attention of the school, a police officer, and a referral is made to our program. We review that and decide if it's a case that is appropriate for us to take. And most times they are appropriate cases for us to take. And we make contact with the family to bring the youth in for a conversation that is a preliminary conversation where we explain what the components of our program are, get to know the youth and the family, and I'll allow them to have some agency in the choice too, as to whether or not they're going to engage with our services. We then sit in front of a community panel, which is comprised of 3 adults that are part of our greater community that are committed to this restorative justice program and working with youth. The restorative justice coordinator is there, the youth, a parent or guardian is with them, and then the victim of the crime that was committed is there. We come up as a group in that reparative panel meeting with what we call a reparative agreement. So we decide what the components of that agreement are for the youth to then move through our program. There's always some sort of an apology that is required to be made, and either verbally for sure, and then also a written apology or reflection. There's an educational component that is done through whoever the restorative justice coordinator is will work with that youth to set up educational moments. And then there's a community service component, looking to their strengths and helping them come out of our program with skills that they might not have had when they entered the program. The youth spends the next few months working through that agreement in tandem, in partnership with the restorative justice coordinator. And once they complete their reparative agreement, we actually come back together as the same panel that did the opening panel with the youth. It's a celebration, really, so that the youth can talk about the things that they achieved and learned during the program. And we send them on their way.
It's a win-win. I get so much out of it because I can see results. This is life-changing for everybody, not just the adolescent, but their families as well. We all encourage them and support them and let them know that one bad choice does not make a bad kid. And, the results are magical. Magical.
And I wish I could show you videos of these cases because you would get chills to see how it affects the lives of the youth and certainly the victims and the whole community. It's very powerful.
One that stands out was a 10-year-old who initially, that's younger than we normally take, but we took him. And when he initially came in for his intake with his mom and stepdad, the first question I asked him is, what do you consider one of your strengths? Because we're trying to work from a strength-based approach. He sat at a table, put his hands on the side of the table, and answered in a very loud voice, anger. You could hear him on the other side of the office. And I'm thinking, here's all this energy this kid has. We need to focus it in a different direction. So in a follow-up, I kind of found out that he did like animals. And so he liked dogs. So I contacted Dr. Clarissa Utley from PSU, who works with the pet assisted therapy program. We had used her before. She came in, met with that youth, met with that family, chose 2 dog owners locally because our program is community-based. Dog owners were from Thornton, neighboring community. They came in and they brought a dog called Holly, who was a golden retriever. And 2 weeks later, the kid who was sitting there holding the table like this, yelling anger, is sitting on the floor, smiling and laughing and hugging a golden retriever. In the next 7 to 8 weeks, he trained that dog to sit, to bow, to walk through cones. And his final activity was to do a presentation with that dog in front of 2 police officers from the referring police department and his school educational team. What was transformative about it? He was a potential kid heading on an out-of-district placement to a specialized school. He ended up making your honor roll that year. The other thing that was unique is that at the end of the program, White Mountain College for Pets asked him to come and read to dogs at their facility. So I went up to see that. He's sitting on the floor, 4 doggitos standing over him, and 4 dogs on the floor while he's reading. And he had a reading challenge. And he did it, and he did a great job, and they were done. And I figured, well, that's it. And then they brought in 4 more dogs and 4 more people. So he did it again.
We've got so many kids that get diminished down to the mistake that they made defining them. And the fact that we can help these kids move beyond that label of the mistake that they made and thrive is something that is deeply personal to me. Not only because I was a teacher, I'm a mom too. I have kids and I see how this works in my own home. So that this gets me to come to work every day because the work that we do with kids and families is incredibly gratifying.
Once they get through this program and all of this is expunged from their record, they are free and they know now that they're really okay, and they learned to take responsibility, accountability, apologies to all. And I don't think we see many of them ever again.
All right, so this, I love this slide because this slide takes a look at the number of youth in our surrounding communities that we've been able to have an impact on since 2007. Since 2007, we've had 252 youth that have successfully completed our program, and in most cases have had their lives completely turned around by the impact that the restorative justice program has had on them. One thing to note about are the numbers and sort of the way that things are trending right now, specifically tied to what Deb talked about with the US Surgeon General's comments about mental health, is in a typical year, we have about 20 cases come through our restorative justice program. Right now, we currently have 17 cases. So we're on pace this year to triple our normal caseload from what we've had in years past. So it's just another way to highlight that our kids are really hurting, and programs like this are obviously incredibly important for them. So this slide highlights the critical demographics that are represented by the youth in our program. Many of the youth that come into our program come to us with opioid impacted families. Of note, 6 of the 7 youth that were in the program about 6 months ago had incarcerated parents. At least one parent was currently incarcerated, and in some of those youth, there were 2 parents incarcerated, and those incarcerations were due directly to their parents' involvement with opioids. Our Newfound high school students, which are a group of students that we work very closely with, report that that 25% of their student body is currently being raised by a grandparent. Again, that's due to a variety of reasons, all tying back to the opioid epidemic, either incarcerated parents or parents that are in the grips of addiction and just cannot parent at this time. Most of the youth in our program are Medicaid eligible, and we're also seeing a rising number of housing and food insecurity cases within the youth in our program. It's also important to note that most of the youth in our program enter with an existing mental health diagnosis. I mentioned ACEs before. The ACEs scores that we do on the ACEs tests that we do on each youth that enters our program are showing high ACEs scores in most of the youth that enter our program. The other concern for us is that because of the environment that a lot of the kids that enter our program have been raised in, the youth that are coming in are showing a really low perception of risk with drug use because it's been normalized in their households. So as you can imagine, for many of the youth in our program, this is the first chance for a lot of them to ever have a trusted adult in their lives. So through that critical connection, that's the work that we're doing to build resiliency and creating hope in a lot of the youth that we see. So this is another slide that I love the graphics on because it's a really lovely way of capturing, again, how we do the work that we do. So the way that we're addressing the fragile population that we serve is through building resilience by connecting the youth to a trusted adult. So that relationship with a trusted adult builds a protective factor that enables our youth to better adapt to adversity and then to move forward and thrive. when we talked to adults who had challenging childhoods about what factors contributed to them being able to succeed in life, the almost universal answer is the steadfast adult in their life that was there to believe in them and support them. So the combination of supportive relationships, adaptive skill building, and positive experiences is the foundation of resilience. We know that our youth learn best when they feel supported by the adults around them. And one of our favorite ways to describe that is by being a mama elephant. So we know that baby elephants can freely explore because there's always a group of mama elephants around protecting that baby elephant. So the work that we do and the team-based approach that we use and tying our youth back to community resources is a way that we can create a mama elephant-like atmosphere for the youth in our program. So they feel as though they're encircled by adults that believe in them and support them. So one of the other ways that we do this work is and talk about building protective factors and resiliency is the individualized and strengths-based community service work that our youth do. All youth in our program have a community service component to their reparative agreement. And it's always fun to talk to the youth about that because they come in imagining that their community service is probably going to be something like picking up trash on the road. And we quickly tell them that couldn't be further from the truth. Our goal in strengths-based community service work is to either connect them to a resource that is somehow tied to something that they want to do later on in life, a skill that they might want to learn, or just something that we've uncovered that might tie into some strengths that youth has identified. This first picture is of a youth that is actually working with Dr. Clarissa Ellie that Tim in the video mentioned does pet assisted therapy. She also has a farm up in Thornton that has too many cows, too many donkeys, and too many goats. And this is a youth that was in our program this fall that very much wants to be a vet tech. And so was able to spend time working up at Clarissa's farm, learning animal husbandry over the course of the fall and the winter. This beauty over here on the left is Hobbs, and Hobbs is also one of the animals that was up on the farm with Clarissa. The youth that worked up there with her said that one of her favorite parts of the program was just being able to go and hug Hobbs because, as many of us know, animals show us unconditional love, and for her, that was something that was really needed at that point. The picture on the right is a little free library that a youth in our program built. He's an avid or voracious reader and really wanted to be able to share that with other people in our community. So we ordered a kit for him. He built the kit, he painted the house, and then spent time going into town to the bookstore and finding books that he wanted to fill that library with. So as a way of having a continuing legacy here at CADY. The police car represents actually another youth that just is about to finish tomorrow. He'll complete our program. This is a youth who came in really wanting to be a police officer. So we were lucky enough that a police department in a local town was willing to have him come in and do his community service with them. This youth spent some time doing some work around the station. So I believe it was some detailing of cars and other things, and then got to spend the second half of his hours doing ride-alongs with the officers. And this is a youth that I can say the transformation in him was dramatic. He doesn't even look like the same youth that came into our program in the early fall. This boy is so excited and hopeful about his future, and even more dedicated to realizing that dream that he has of being a police officer, and has now this resource. He'll continue to go in and volunteer at the police department and have that connection with those officers. The picture below is a desk and that represents a really nice partnership that we had this year with the Rotary Club in Plymouth. The Rotary Club donated desk kits to us during the heart of the pandemic that we were able to use with the youth in our program in a time when it was hard for us to get community service moments for them where they could go into community organizations because a lot of people were shut down at that point. So the youth were able to build these desks. These kits were in pieces. So a lot of the youth in our program were able to learn a skill that they didn't know that they needed to have, and felt really great about the fact that they could use a drill and a hammer and create these desks, and then let them decorate the desks however they wanted to do, whatever they wanted to do to decorate those desks. And then we donated them to local families that had children at home during the pandemic, learning virtually and didn't have a place of their own to do their Zoom classroom meetings. So we ended up donating, I believe it was in the total, in the end, it was about 14 desks to local families built by the youth in our program. So I'm going to pass back over to Deb.
Thank you, Nikki. That was wonderful. We do want, if any of you would like to learn more about CADY, each year we sponsor a major signature event, the Prevention Summit. We do that at Plymouth State University Merrill Place Conference Center. We typically have 300 attend that event, and that ranges from the governor to the federal delegation, all our community partners in healthcare and education, and community members. So if any of you might like to attend that, please just let us know, or put your name and address in the chat, and we'll follow up with an invitation. And that's going to be on May 27th. So please save that date. And the next slide, please, Nikki. And then we're coming right to the end. And as Nikki said, with being a trusted adult in a child's life is transformational, and it can make the difference between life and death. So whether it's with your own children, grandchildren, in the community, and whatever role you undertake, we all need to act as if what we do makes a difference, because it does. We see it and we know it. So thank you so much for your participation today. And we always have volunteer opportunities, and if there's anything, any type of questions you have, we certainly, hopefully we saved enough time. We have 10 minutes. We'd love to be able to, discuss that further. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb and Nikki. Are there some questions out there that we can pose?
I don't have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carol. You go first.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering, where did the kids get picked up at the schools or for this program?
So that's a great question. Do you mean where do they get picked up to come and do the work with us?
Yes.
So we actually do this a variety of ways. We either have them come here to the office and work with us here in the office, or what we prefer to do is actually go into school and meet them during the school day. So for example, I spend every single day of the week down at Newfound High School meeting with kids there. It's nice for them if we come down. Well, it's nice for us because that we can see them in their school environment. It also allows us to work with them during their school day, so that we're not taking away from time if they are doing a co-curricular or if they have a job after school. And obviously it lessens hardship on their parents if it's an issue for them to get us here to their office if the parent is working, or if gas money is an issue. So that's our preference, is when we can, to get down into schools and meet with the youth.
Oh, I guess what I want to know is about identifying which kid.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so we receive kids from 3 different streams. So we receive them through the court system, through our local police departments, or from schools. Their schools can also make referrals to us.
Mm-hmm. Got it. All right, thanks.
Nikki, you and I both work together in a dean's office and work with young kids. I was curious, I think Deb raised this right at the very beginning, the vaping numbers for New Hampshire, this area, as well as the marijuana, are high in the state, high in the country, I suspect, if New Hampshire is ranking so high. Why vaping? Why? I thought we had moved out of that. Did you see that number rise again with the pandemic? Is it become cheaper, easily available than other things, let's say other drugs? Why is it the choice of young people today?
Do you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
We could both take it. I'll start with. We were notified. This was, I guess probably about 3-4 years ago. From the school principal, that they had this new technique, and it was very covert. No one knew about this because it's very easily to conceal a vaping device, a vaping pen. So you don't no one knew. Parents didn't know, schools didn't know. I had no idea what they were talking about when they said vaping. Prevention, no public health organizations were aware of this. It came on like a tsunami. It hit. And so because of it, they were easily concealed. Kids were vaping and they could put it right up into their sleeve and exhale the vapors into their sleeve. And so it was under the radar for quite a while. Then once it became an issue, it had already taken off. I mean, full steam ahead. It was like a runaway freight train. So that's the kind of thing that we have been working. We don't have new data to tell us that, to really inform our next steps. There's been all types of vaping education put out there and resources for youth and families. And throughout the country, we've done all types of trainings and awareness raising type of events. We were the first out there in the state to start our youth, that you heard the youth leaders, they did a phenomenal presentation. They made posters that looked professional and they went nationwide. They were even hanging in the White House at one point. So these are the kind of things that we were, once we became aware of it, we were on it. But unfortunately, the kids are always, and not just the kids, but drug dealers are always a few steps ahead of us. And so, and maybe Nikki, you could give some further examples of what you do with the kids.
Well, I think, from our perspective too, is that, it's interesting when you talk to youth, that they have a really low tolerance for cigarette smoking. They find that to be really kind of, they'll say it's disgusting or it's, a really ugly habit. And so I think what we've kind of seen too is a whole new swath of kids that have gotten obviously addicted to nicotine. But it happens sort of covertly because they think cigarettes are disgusting. And so they grew up sort of, resisting that, but vaping for whatever reason, I think, a pretty effective marketing campaign has addicted a whole new generation of kids. And so that's what a lot of what we see that they're struggling with is that they come in and they have these nicotine addictions, which are really hard to kick.
Yeah, it's the nicotine and also the THC. So, I mean, that takes hold very quickly. And so you could have dual addictions, and our kids just don't have the capacity to cope with that, along with the mental health issues. And that's why we're so worried about what we're facing out there, the landscape. It's not easy.
I do want to just mention that at the time, the numbers that we presented were prior to the pandemic. So as Deb said, we do not have current data on vaping use. However, with everything that we've talked about tonight, I think we may see an increase, but there was also some legislation that was put forward to raise the purchasing, you have to be 21 or older to purchase even these vaping products. So hopefully that will have a positive impact on use. But yeah, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, that's a good point, Anne, because prior to that legislation being enacted, there were underage kids going into local retail outlets buying these jewel pods, and they can always access it through social sources, but whatever we can do to limit access, that's one of the tools that we have at our disposal. So thanks for bringing that up, Anne.
Other questions? I love that someone who gave you the desk kits. What would be something that you would be looking for? Do you have a list on your webpage for other ideas like that, things that people might donate to you?
That's a great question, Deb. I don't know if you
know a wish list. I mean, Nikki, I think that I know that we always she loves to have snacks for the kids, so that's something really important. We give them a little incentives. there's, at one point we had one boy in the program that was 27 pounds underweight, and his mother was homeless, and he did not want to be in the homeless shelter, so he was couch surfing. And believe it or not, he was arrested for stealing a sandwich. And thankfully, the Plymouth PD, had the, the empathy for this young man, and they sent him to us, and we were able to connect him with the health care that he needed. It was probably, I'll never forget, probably a 20-degree freezing day, and he came walking into the office with this frayed, lightweight hoodie. He didn't even have a winter coat. And so, if that's the type of thing, one of our restorative justice volunteers brought her son's clothing. This was pretty high end, Ralph Lauren type of shirts and beautiful jackets, and gave them to him. And so these are the kind of, gift cards, those type of things. We always try to hook the family up. Nikki does with, during the holidays with food baskets, with, gift cards, that type of thing. We just recently purchased a Lego kit for one of the young boys. So that was one thing that he really likes to do. So he comes in and we'll build Lego type of structures, things along that line. Anything that appeals to kids is always something that we appreciate.
Mhm.
Thank you for the question, Kathy.
Yeah. Well, if no one, I don't see anything on the chat. Do you, Anne? I don't.
I don't, no.
Well,
But I did want, I just did want to say one thing, and as far as the invitation to the prevention summit, and Kathy, I'm sure that you're on our mailing list, but if there's another person that we should include, and maybe they can just share the invitation at the next Friends meeting, then,
that's a
we
good
can
idea.
certainly-
Put that down.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Well, thank you for the tough work you do, and I'm just excited about that restorative justice and the other avenues for bringing these kids, or giving these kids a second chance, and I'm so glad that the success rate is so high. So I'll look forward to seeing all of you, and in the meantime, have a great evening, and thanks again, Deb and Nikki in particular.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
so
us.
much, Kathy, and thank you to everyone that attended. We appreciate that.
No, it's
Thanks.
great.
Take
I think
care,
we
everyone.
all learned something tonight.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
do. We always do. And
All
thanks
right.
so much, Kathy. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Adam. All right. Good night, all.